Well, hello and welcome to Extra Minutes, the 60 Minutes podcast. I'm Adam Hegarty. I'm joined by producer Serge Negus. Serge,
Good to be here.
Pretty good gig. Hey, we're here in Harvey Bay, tracking the fascinating and, got to say, changing, surprisingly, migration of particularly humpback whales, but whales in general, up and down the Australia East Coast. To reiterate, very, very good gig, but not always that easy. Hey, Serge?
No, very difficult. When we first got thrown this one by our supervising producer, Stephen, shout out to Stephen for getting this one across the line for us.
Thank you very much.
It seemed like a gift, but if you've ever had any experience doing wildlife documentary making, wildlife is very challenging, and when you combine weather with that, it makes finding one of the 60,000 humpback whales coming up the coast quite difficult. And we've had east coast lows, and we've had crazy rain and unseasonably cold weather here in Harvey Bay. So it's definitely been a challenge, but it's meant that the success of actually finding them has made it all the better.
So lucky we came up here. We spent that, a Friday in Sydney Harbour, which is really cool because you realise when you talk to the experts that they're getting really close to where a lot of people just spend their day-to-day life out on the water. But when we went out there, conditions would have it and the timing would have it that they weren't there or they were too far out. We looked at that horizon, we saw the whale watching vessels, just specks, right? So we had to put a line through that day, but then came up here to Harvey Bay and had a great old time.
Exactly. Like, that's the thing. Like, everyone in Sydney at the moment, or in the last month or so, have just been seeing whales literally outside their window basically every day. And then we had that huge weather system come through, and the day we went out on the water with our researcher, Vanessa, it was just rocky, and what we were told was basically because of that weather system and also the time of the year that they're migrating, they're basically 8 to 12 k's off the coast, and we're in pretty small boats.
Yeah, exactly.
On
Research boat, which sounds good. But
Given the weather, wasn't really appropriate to head that far out of the head. It's definitely not going to get that across the sort of safety line at work. So we had to pull back there. But yeah, luckily, like you said, we came up to Harvey Bay, which is where they're basically, the majority of the humpback whales at least, are sort of setting up at the moment on their migration.
Yeah. Even then, though, I just have this image of Jess, the camera woman, the second camera we had out here, sitting in that water for what? I reckon about half an hour longer, and it was so funny. We're just watching the whales, just an amazing experience even from the boat, just approaching her, like, oh, she's on here, we're like a cheer squad on board, and then boop, straight down, and then back from behind it. It's like they were playing with us.
Totally, and that's the thing, is that even our guide was saying that he'd spot whales and we'd look at them and figure out whether or not we could get in the water, and he would decide based on what the whales were doing as to whether or not they were playful enough to want to come around us when we were swimming. And so you'd go past whales and be like, no, that's not going to work, those ones aren't playful enough. And so you had to really sort of pick and choose, and there was a good chance that we wouldn't get the opportunity to actually get in the water and dive with them. So we ended up getting very lucky, and according to our guide, it was what he termed one of the best sort of muggings, which is when the whales come and kind of surround the boat and surround the divers in the water, that they'd had all year. The second best, like, we're in the water for about 39 minutes with these 3 curious whales while they basically just checked us out. Yeah,
it's crazy to think, but we could have gone back with nothing, which would have been terrible for our employment status.
Yes.
But it sort of adds to the experience, doesn't it? And that's what Dylan on the tour boat sort of said to us, who took us out. He said, well, that's part, might have actually been his partner Lara, but they were explaining that that's part of the joy of doing what they do and why it's such a profound experience, because you go out there, you're a visitor in their world. So if you don't get anything, you've got to be okay with that.
Totally.
But that means when you do get something, have that experience, it's just so profound and so wonderful. Even for them, he was grinning from ear to ear. He's done it a million times, and I looked over to him in the water, and he was ecstatic.
It was pretty funny. I had a camera trying to film your reaction.
Yeah.
But when the whales first started coming in, I was squealing like a little girl.
I was also squealing, man.
And I'm hoping that when it goes to air, it sounds like it's you squealing rather than me. And then I had to try and tone myself down after like third or fourth pass to try and stop screaming.
Yeah, but it was so much fun, and it's just such an experience. And I don't know about you, right? I was trying to ask a few people with the interviews, like, to describe the feeling. And the best way I can describe it is it's just the mystery of it. So that's why it's so captivating just seeing them. But beyond that, I can't really explain, to be honest, why it is so much of a wonderful thing.
Well, Dylan does talk about it as like people have a religious experience, and that when people he takes out see them, they end up getting out of the water crying and hugging him. And I think it's something potentially related to what he was saying, and how they are mammals. They are like us. They are very similar, even though you wouldn't think it. And Dylan describes this in the show. Like, he talks about how their anatomy is very similar. And, what happens to their body underwater is very similar to what happens to ours. And so they know that we're also mammals. And so there's this sort of kindred spirit type sort of dynamic that occurs. I think as well, just the sheer size of them, the fact that we know that they're hyper intelligent and that they've got very complex language systems and that they aren't that dissimilar to us, a combination of all those factors really make the whole experience very profound. And you're also out here next to Fraser Island, now Gari, and that place itself is very special as well. And so as journalists, we're not necessarily the most spiritual of people, but there is something a bit more profound about this experience than meets the eye, I think.
You turned to me in your profound way and you sort of said, like, you actually feel it when you're out there, don't you? And you do. Like, the moment you said that, actually, yeah, I do, because it's just so wild, and you feel so tiny, especially when you're in the water, surrounded by these like, massive animals.
Yeah.
And you're in their hands. You get clipped by one.
Yeah.
You're gone.
But then you kind of like, you know how smart they are, and so you know that they're getting like, a few feet away from you, but you know that then they're not going to touch you unless one of them has a conniption and like, wigs out, and it does happen. So you got to be very careful and be with the right people while you're doing it.
I felt weirdly safe. So.
Same here. But, I think as well, there's one thing I think a lot of people dream of who want to dive with whales, which is coming eye to eye with a whale. And that was what we first saw, is this whale pull up, and their eyes are the size of dinner plates. It's pretty profound that as well by itself. And I think in this day and age, it's rare that people get the opportunity to experience that connection with nature. The world's just overrun with technology and we're so urbanized, and so when you actually go back to, I guess, the origin of all species like we did, it's it really does touch you.
Got so lucky, as we sort of said, coming out this way. We had a good gig, as I said, just bobbing around there in the water with the GoPros and just checking it all out. Got a feel for the crew. Hey, you mentioned Jess, who was in the water just with that rig for so long. I think I saw Kay, the other cameraman, almost fall over at one point. I think as I got back in the boat, I drenched all of Matt the Soundo's gear. So again, goes to the difficulty of filming this stuff.
Poor Matt got a bit seasick as well. Poor
we dobbed him in there, didn't we?
No, we were cruising comparatively to them, and I mean that's the thing about 60 Minutes is you'd never get it done without the crew and their commitment. And they shiver through it and they deal with it all, and it was fantastic.
You're a bit of an expert journalist in the environmental area. You've done a fair bit of these things, right? I mean, how does that experience and with whales sort of stack up for you, mate?
It's absolutely up there. I think anyone who just likes wildlife would love to be able to swim with those majestic beasts. So for me, it definitely would be in a top 5 experience. I've been lucky enough to do some pretty crazy things with some of my wildlife reporting over the years. But you have to be top 5, if not top 3, I think. Yeah.
Was it the eye with the whale that got you? You mentioned it. I think
so.
It was for me. Yeah. And it's just it's the slowness of how they just glide past you, and then you see that eye just staring at you. They might give you what seems like a little bit of a wave, and they are just checking you out, and
they're just so hyper aware.
Strange.
Matt now Soundo had a hydrophone in the water, and it's not big. It's like like a tiny wire. It's small, murky water. Not easy to see. And we were watching this whale, and it was going past, and it was checking out the hydrophone, getting so close to it, turning its eye to look at it, going, "What is that?" And then just turning away at the last minute and like just missing it. That's how alert these animals are. And Vanessa, the Dr. Vanessa who was with us researching, she was saying that their actions around us and was playful. And I guess there's potentially a fine line between being playful and being a bit more sort of dangerous a scenario, but that's why we're with the right guides and with the right people so that we can have that experience. So you've got to do it the right way, and that's what we learn a lot about this trip too.
It's so important, and you realise how important that is. But we even sort of had that experience too, didn't we? Where we were in the water there, and they were getting close, and we felt safe. Because of the people we were with, but also because of what seemed like really good nature from the animals we were trying to research. But as soon as they got that little bit close and the tails started coming a bit close to us, immediately the call was out the water, we've got to do this right, and we're in the boat in about 5 minutes, right?
Exactly. And, we were talking to the guys after about that, like the guys from What We Gone Tours, Dylan and Lara, and they were saying that for them, it's really important that they maintain that level of sort of like alertness to what's going on, and that they do a good like sustainable business with ethics, and they're careful of the animals, because they said there's a few operators around that are kind of putting a dark spot on the industry, and they really want to make sure it's done properly. So for anyone out there who wants to do this, make sure you go through the right reputable companies, make sure they've got the right credentials, make sure they've got the right licenses, because there are a few cowboys out there and they really should be shut down.
You can see it going on a different path there, can't you? I mean, Dylan and Lara are really good on this point, that they're confident that most people in this space really care about the animals and not just making a buck. So in the right hands, it's just this wonderful experience, and important to share the knowledge out there, so we as humans, basically as a society, care about them. But the number, in terms of the increase in humpback whales, which are no longer endangered, is extraordinary. End of whaling, what was it, about 200 that were counted along our coast? Now it's as close, some experts say, to like 60,000, which is crazy in such a short time. But then people will look at that and go, look, that's a good tour opportunity.
Exactly.
Got to do it right.
Exactly. And it's crazy to think that those animals are so big. There's 60,000 of them out there. But then you hear these stories pre-whaling of, sailors talking about seeing whales from as far as the horizon goes, so maybe there's going to be more, and we've got to be prepared for that. And I think it's people that we speak to in this story that are the ones that are trying to sort of forge the way and being able to make sure we can do that sustainably, because government, industry, the public, being out in the water boating, we need to be conscious that we could have horizons whale to whale basically by the end of the next decade.
And I'll give you credit for this comparison. You said it to me a few days ago. You've got kangaroos here, koalas. Count whales as our new native wildlife?
Well, yeah, because we are hearing, as you'll hear in this story, that there's a chance that a lot of these humpbacks aren't even going back to Antarctica anymore, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But you could almost consider humpbacks endemic now, so they're basically as Aussie as a kangaroo.
Definitely a good one to leave it on, isn't it, Serge?
Exactly.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you.
You can catch that story, of course, on 9 Now, as well as our 60 Minutes YouTube channel.